Namaste, Galactic family. Welcome back to the channel Indigo Angel. Come on into this dimension and come on into a special Sunday night live where I'm really excited to get into this roundtable because we're going to be talking all about the Great White North and our sister country, Canada, and the Cantina Starseed homeland. I don't know if y'all knew that, but they call the starseeds in Canada cantinas. So I thought that was kind of a fun and interesting nickname for all of our ascending indigo family in the north. But uh, to confirm that and kind of figure out if that nickname is actually viable, because I just kind of read that before coming in, we're going to talk with all of my divine sisters from Canada tonight. We're going to be really diving in and speaking on all of the diabolical globalist schemes and everything that seems to be ruling over Canada right now and suppressing freedom of speech and just really suppressing them from being able to find their voice and really kind of step out of this crazy shit show that's happening right now because essentially Trudeau has stepped down and his handler, Mark Carnage, who is a World Economic Forum puppet, has stepped in. Essentially, a guy who hasn't even lived in Canada for the last 10 years, and none of the Canadians even get a say about this. So, why is that happening? These are all things we're going to talk about tonight and we're going to go over. Um, you know, my beautiful sisters have been sending me some videos today, and it might have something to do with this illusion of Canada and, Canada essentially not really being a sovereign nation, still very much tied to the monarchy and the crown. And, this Mark Carnage guy being an initiate who's come in through BlackRock and really just someone who's kind of been brought in to continue the regime of the totalitarianism, liberalism, authoritarianism control, unfortunately. So there's a lot to this, and it's very extensive. As many of you may know, you've been watching and following and rooting for our Canadians because they're essentially our family over here in this awakening that we have going on the American lands. This is all about currently within the planetary ascension timelines. This is about activating the liberation and the freedom codes. And so I think personally what we're seeing is a lot of this energy is spilling over into Canada, and this awakening is a force that the globalist elite can't stop, and they really don't like it. So they're pulling out, this Carnage guy out of their black book playbook pocket to try to control everything and try to put everybody back to sleep. But it's like can't stop, won't stop. The Canadians are not going back to bed. So, hey, we're here, right? So it's exciting. And I'm really happy to hear from everyone that wanted to join on the roundtable tonight. We have three beautiful sisters tuning in from Canada, so they're going to give us their perspective all on this and let us know what they're thinking and feeling, according to the politics all the way to the level of the grids and what's going on the ley lines and the stargates up there and the vortices and what do we think's actually playing out in terms of consciousness awakening and what types of energy clearings need to be going on up there essentially. So, yeah, we're going to deep dive all of this. I'm so happy that everyone can tune in with us tonight. We have everybody already checking on in the chat, so that's amazing. Just drop it down in the chat. Let us know that you guys are here. You do have to be subscribed to the channel for at least 60 seconds to get into the chat, but we love it when you guys follow along and let us know what you're thinking as we move through the topics that we're discussing. So be sure to put a big like on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notifications bell, and we're just going to go around and introduce everyone that's here tonight, starting with myself and letting everybody know where we're coming from. So, where in Canada everyone's dropping in from. And essentially, I'm not from Canada. I'm Indie. I go by Indigo Angel on YouTube. I am down in Pensacola. I'm close to the Gulf of America. I'm within range of Stargate 2, and essentially, I survived a big tornado storm that was supposed to come in last night and take everybody out. But it really wasn't that bad. The wind was, it was windy for a little while, but then it moved on quickly. So we always get these really big hypes for these storms. Like we have to prepare for, a Category 5 hurricane all the time and like the worst level of tornadoes you have ever seen. And then all of a sudden it just kind of breaches and it's clear and things are quick moving. So I think that's due to the wind forces down here in the Gulf of America that things do move quickly. Like storms don't ever last too long. So yeah, no fear over here. The suns were actually shining today, so it was really awesome. And yeah, but thank you. And whoever would like to go next, go for it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Raquel coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, representing my channel, All That Is. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Indy, for this beautiful get together. As always, we have fun in these roundtables, and I'm so pleased to be bringing a light to Canada. I think this is long overdue, so I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'll hop on. So my name is Shakina. I originally come from California, actually, in the United States. I came up to Canada about 2001. My first day was 9/11. I had been in Egypt on my honeymoon. The Egyptian priests at the temples were like, get out of the States. So my husband and I came here because he's Canadian from Alberta. And woke up to 9/11. So I was like, well, that's suspicious. Okay. And then we came out here to the Kootenai, to the land of the Sinaiaks, where I occupy here my home. And it's been the Queen City, a lot of history here. We're literally called the Queen City. So we have a lot of interesting vortices here in the Kootenai. A lot of the ancient Lemurian timeline codex is in the crystals and mountains here, and also in the water, which happens to power many, many people in America from the Columbia River. And so I work with children, and my medicine is really bringing the decolonization of the colonies, of the colonizers, and really working to bring in reconciliation, because it's not a word, it's an action to restore and even enhance and upgrade our present grid, to save it from the matrix and restore to the natrix. So that is I. Blessings.
Love it.
Hi, I'm Shakina Grace, and I am also in the Kootenays or Kootenai. I haven't pronounced it that way, but I'm learning a lot from Shakina Ma already. We moved here, my husband and I moved here from Alberta and Saskatchewan in 2019. A little bit of a similar story in terms of just getting like the strong urgency to get out of the city grid of Saskatoon and moved to the mountains right before COVID hit. So we ended up on 13 acres just north of Caslow in BC. And we've opened up a healing center here called Mystic Mountain. And so I would say lots of focus on just reclamation of sovereignty, bodily autonomy, encouraging, teaching, sharing curriculum for people to begin to explore their own, akash, their own body, their own gnosis, and start to feel that reclamation of absolute sovereignty. And also, I love working with the grids. I do my own kind of grid work mini missions. I still feel a connection and desire to clear the grids in Saskatchewan, which is what kind of got me connected up with Raquel, and been following your channel, Indy, for a while and getting super activated and excited about this work. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to this.
Hi everyone, I'm Ani, and I have been on Indy's channel before on multiple different roundtables, and I'm so happy that both Shakina Grace, and Shakina Ma got to join us today and tonight. I live in Ashland, Oregon, and I live on the land of the peoples of the Shasta, Takelma, and Lakgawa people. And I live near Mount Shasta, about an hour north. And it has been very interesting weather the past couple of days. It was pouring all day today, which is kind of unusual, and flooding. So I think all of the weather that was, going to Indy is now coming to me. So, but I'm hoping that the sun will come out soon. And I'm so happy to join this conversation tonight with the Canadians and have interesting talks. Thank you.
You, Missy. Oh, you're muted, sister.
Hi, I'm Missy Hill coming to you from Western North Carolina, Asheville, beautiful Asheville, land of the sky. And we have a beautiful mountain called Mount Mitchell that resides at 6,684 feet, which actually has a microclimate. And I just want to share this bit of information. At one time before 1712, North and South Carolina were just called the Carolinas. And I'm actually wearing my Charleston shirt today from Rainbow Row in Charleston. So just wanted to give a shout out to our grid work boots on the ground mission that we will be having April 11th through the 13th. Come on down to Charleston. Your energies are needed. It ties into Canada, it ties into the UK, and all our boots on the ground and remote missions all tie in together. So we can't wait to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. We love it. We're so excited. We're so pumped. It's really just weaving everything together into all these different spaces and places and countries and grids, and it's all connected, everything that we're doing there in Charleston. It's really blowing my mind, to be honest with you, Missy. I wasn't expecting that when we chose this location and chose the mission, and that it would just, I mean, to be expected, because this is always how it happens, is everything just perfectly aligns, but it's just wow, the patriotism, just the global war prevention, the freedom of speech, everything we're going to be talking about tonight. So it's so exciting, and yeah, I'm really excited that both Shekinah Grace and Shekinah Ma are here. I'm really thrilled that you came to talk with us and share everything about what you guys are perceiving. And Raquel as well. Thank you, my Canadian sisters. Yeah, I think this is so perfect because we are sisters. We're sister countries. Like the border's just an invisible line, essentially. And so, I mean, we care for one another. We have a lot of friends on both sides of the borders. We move back and forth. Many Canadians that I know and friends, like they like to come down here and travel and vacation and vice versa. And so it just makes sense that we definitely vouch and stick up for each other and truly listen to um, what we're experiencing on these sides of the border so we can, I feel like, find our voices more and help others to awaken to what's diabolical and what has been, I think, been trying to hold a veil over Canadians for a long time. Um, Maybe let's talk about this a little bit too, is what do you think is happening on a level of awakening, truth, consciousness in terms of Canadians? Like, what would you say is the consensus of the state of most Canadians? Where is the majority of people leaning or swaying in terms of their feelings with what's happening on a political level? Because I mean, it's a lot of shifts, it's a lot of changes. We know that there's all these tariffs that are being implicated from the United States and then now China. So, and they tried to, turn the electricity off recently, I think, in some places in the US. So, what is like the overall feeling of Canadians with what's happening with these governmental shifts?
I can go first if you'd like. Well, I think the overall consensus is if you follow what the ascension process is, I think people first realize the truth, right? And that is where, people first understand and realize that, we've had the wool pulled over our eyes for many hundreds of years, if you will. But, on a base level, it's, the people that are ruling over us and who we consider leadership, people in our leadership roles, in high standing government roles, or even, CEOs of organizations and things like that. These are the ones that direct the social fabric, if you will, right? And so when the truth comes out about, all of these energies, if you will, that have been pulling the wool over everybody's eyes, then it's like everybody is, suddenly waking up to this reality that they didn't really, think was the truth. Really, it's been a lie for most of our lives, right? And so I think Canada's at that stage more or less now. It's like, they're finding out the truth about their government. They're finding out the truth about all of the inversions that have taken place on so many levels. And so in terms of the political scene, it's been a total upheaval since, Justin Trudeau has been in power. And so it's been a struggle for every single Canadian, I think, just to, to live in a day-to-day sort of situation. People have been dragged around, like, they've been put through the ringer on every level, really. People that had a good living, shall we say, 10 years ago are now like living paycheck to paycheck, if that. So they've been like really, really brought down to the bare minimum. And there are many people that are truly angry and upset by what's happening. And now, if you bring in, as you called him, Mark Carnage, into this, and it's very appropriate, right? Because that's what he's been termed as in terms of his background, because he goes into a country or a situation and he basically guts it, right, to bring it down to the bare minimum, if you will, to then avert it, to make it into something that lines their pockets, or to whoever's behind the scenes. And in this case, he's like, a known supporter of the World Economic Forum. And, he's a supporter of the United Nations. And so there's that whole 2030 agenda, which he's directly involved with. And so from that perspective, he's definitely not somebody that speaks for the Canadian people. And the way or the manner in which he's come into becoming a prime minister is totally questionable, right? He was like, first of all, in the background supporting Trudeau and his policies. So he was Trudeau's advisor all these years. And so all of Trudeau's policies, if you will, were essentially nudged into place by this guy from the background. So he was like puppeting Trudeau all along and guiding what his principles were and what was brought forward for the Canadian public, essentially. And now that, Trudeau is, well, he was hated a lot by many people. And so, he was nudged out of the way, if you will, by his own handler and brought in through the back door. And this guy, he's not even an MP in Canada, so he doesn't have membership to even walk into Parliament and represent the people. He has to sit in the gallery, so to speak. He cannot go to the Parliament floor. So he's the one that's meant to lead us. Like, come on, where's the truth, or where's the, I guess the essence of that, really. So there are a lot of inconsistencies in the way this thing has been handled. And there are many people that are really upset about what's going on. And then you throw in, somebody like Donald Trump and bringing in all the tariffs. And so there's so many aspects and so many layers to this that, yeah, it's really unbelievable. Anyway, I'll let the other guys speak a bit. So Shakina Grace or Shakina Ma, if you guys want to add something to that. I see all the dogs have joined us too.
I'll just hop in quick just to generally say that I remember when COVID first started and feeling like we were such a sleepy nation. Like there was like this sleep spell over, and there always has been, but it became very like almost like I just saw this like spell of sleepiness. Even with the rest of the world, like I kept people who were speaking out during that time, I kept saying, who's talking about Canada? Let's talk about Canada. And it just felt like crickets, with even the rest of the world, including Canada in the conversation during COVID. I found that was like not, I followed a lot of people and it just wasn't included in the conversation. And then since Trump, I think the beneficial thing about Trump, energetically wise, is that he's the first force that's really like shaken people out of like a slumber consciousness. And I don't really like subscribe to any political leaning necessarily. There's things that I notice that I think I can see energetically or from a higher perspective are serving like a higher outcome. And I think that's one thing I can see that's positive about this kind of threatening or bullying type energy coming from Trump is that I'm really seeing a passion, at least, like a fire start to burn in the hearts of people who live on this land. And I think that's a good thing. It's just now the purification process of working through, as Raquel said, like the waking up process to a lot of these truths, at like the belly of like the underworld or underbelly of what's been going on in Canada for so long. And so I just feel like in a way we're behind a little bit in terms of the awakening process if you compare us to the US. But I think it's a really positive pressure almost like, that's like gonna help to create like that diamond consciousness within the Canadian population to become more clarified in their vision for the future of these lands. So I just wanted to share that piece.
Oh, thank you.
If I may, I would like to add that during 2020, which is like 2020 judgment, like seeing things in clear 2020 sight, we in Canada actually were able to initiate during the COVID era, which was supposed to be the Great Reset. We were able to initiate an incredible actual kind of revolution that sparked within the freedom fighters, which I was one of them. And we had a huge organization, which actually rippled out into the world and started the tractors and farmers and people from all over different countries of this planet to also take to the streets and actually like say no and spray shit all over the government buildings and absolutely deny and revoke the powers of this so-called globalonis, as I like to call them. So I do feel Canada actually was an initiator of freedom and truth through the trucker convoy and through showing up down into Ottawa and occupying essentially the government square. And I have friends who are on the front lines that were right in that. I have a native brother called him Big Bear, who was just so instrumental in bringing and rallying around heart and soul. And we've seen people from all walks of life show up down there, children, families, peaceful protests. So I actually think that Canada sparked a massive basic revocation, like we're revoking you. We say no. It's like Neo in the Matrix, no. And I mean, if the Canada's myth, like actually Canada does not exist. It's a corporation. It's a corpse. It's dead. And since like 1931, it really has ceased to exist and has been void of course. So I truly see that, right now there's a massive like death rebirth cycle where it's like, Sata Nama, there's like death, rebirth, new life. So we're in like that caterpillar to butterfly process of metamorphosizing. And right now we're just seeing the death. That's like the core. However, I truly believe it's turning really powerfully around, and I see a huge rising of very conscious, aware people. I have a lot of friends who are working with Cal Washington, doing the whole like servicing of notice of liabilities, and they've gotten the Denmark Queen to actually resign and step down, so that if they can do that in other countries, we can do it here. I know that there's a massive gathering of the not, we call them red apples, they're like red on the outside, white on the inside. That's a bad analogy, but There's the actual traditional chiefs, not the like tribal chiefs that work with the government, but the actual hereditary chiefs, which is a really important distinction. So the hereditary chiefs are all working together. There's a birch scroll prophecy, whereas we actually take the Turtle Island back. And so where we are all connected is that this is a turtle. We are on Turtle Island, and we are the crown, so we're the head of the turtle up here in the north, and then like down in South America it's the tail. So as this is like this kind of crown land, so it's very symbolic. We are on crown land, but even that has been void since 1931, so we're under an illusion. So I've been working with like smoke and mirrors and shattering the illusion of this smoke and mirrors, because that's all it is. And they run the MK Ultra, like that was at McGill University, which is in Quebec. So they ran the whole like beginnings to MK Ultra here with Pierre Trudeau. And this is a lot of interesting pieces to this puzzle, but I would like to say that I actually think we're on a massive awakening that's awesome.
Yeah, so awesome. And I have to agree with you 100%. The whole trucker convoy that happened, I mean, that was so inspiring and liberating. I remember doing like grid work, cosmic grid updates about it. And I was connecting it to the awakening of the dove light and the new earth prophecy emerging and it all happening on the 44th parallel. And it was really inspiring. Um, so wow, yeah, that's really, I'm happy that you brought that in. Maybe if you could go in a little bit more about this illusion, the illusion of Canada. I feel like that was really significant in this 1931 that you're talking about. Uh, Maybe go on a little bit of the history. So what you say Canada is a corporation. I love that, by the way. Hit the
Mhm.
like button if you guys like that because that was awesome. A corpse. So what's kind of happened then? So, I mean, it's always belonged to the crown, right? Like it's never been a free state, or how does this work with
Well,
Canada?
to be like actually accurate, it doesn't belong to anybody because it's the Mother Earth. So Inamaka, the Mother Earth, however you like to call her, all the indigenous knew you never owned the earth. You know, it's like Chief Seattle. We don't own the earth. We belong to the earth, and everything we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. So that's an illusion number one. They did through, you know, colonization, as they did through India and Australia and all the other places around the world. These draconian, reptilian, basic, fallen, dark lords from hell have, like, you know, succeeded in colonizing this earth. And so basically, if you watch The Myth is Canada, I mean, like, I'm sitting here taking notes. Like, there's so much to learn in how this is actually all a setup. So they basically took over. There's many different things you have to know within the provinces, but those are really colonies. And so they were bringing up that queen monarch, you know, through Queen Elizabeth II. So Queen Elizabeth II was the one that was basically, is that right? No, sorry, it's Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was the one who basically came in and took over this country with her basic Knights Templars working on taking this over. I'm not going to go through all the details because there's so much to say. And I just
I
got a
think you
puppy,
have a dog.
so
I think he's barking. Yeah.
yeah, no, we got another rescue here. Basically, what's happened that I'd like to say that really matters in all of this is when we get to this 1931. And in 1931, they basically were able to put a void of course. So they canceled and nullified the whole Hudson Bay Company and the provinces or colonies of the Queen. And then they were able to try to create this Commonwealth, which then removed the power from the Queen and like her, you know, artificial matrix through all these various different Masonic and Knights Templars and Knights of Pythias. There's all these secret societies that run Canada. And they, you know, took all of this land from the First Nations people people, even though the First Nations people still actually own all the land, if that's how you want to look at it. They still have title to like Rupert's Land, all these various different acts and deals and treaties. And that's the thing, is like it's the same with the United States, because I'm, Cherokee and Choctaw, and then we get moved to Oklahoma, and then they set up this whole red man's land, and then like you have the Oklahoma land rush, and then they just take it all back. So that's kind of exactly what's been going on here in Canada, is like this give and take cat and mouse game. But when Pierre Trudeau stepped in, who tried to then create this new constitution with then Queen Elizabeth II. So they meet, they have a signing. And when that happens, they basically create the Charter, Canadian Charter's Rights Freedoms. So that's what everybody's been like calling to during the freedom movement. But that's all an illusion as well. And everything, again, has been void. They cannot change that since 1931. So the smoke and mirrors is this kind of illusory quest, if you want to like look at a chessboard game where you're trying to like checkmate your opponent, and it's all bluff. And so all we really need to focus on, because I really love, there's a statement by Buckeye Balls, Buckminster Fuller of Saskatchewan. So Buckminster Fuller, he's like, you don't want to fight. You don't ever fight. You just change it through this action of reclaiming the truth. And so once we ring through the truth, we can have a convention of constitution. So there's like actually a very clear template to reorganize, recalibrate, redesign all of our earth. And it's actually being put into place by people like Cal Washington and Sasha Stone, if you know Sasha Stone from the Lazarus Initiative. So this is all happening. We're just witnessing the change of power from like this fallen Luciferic satanic, reptilian draconian group, and then like coming back to now us, the people. And I think this was all a part of the alchemy. Like you had to take the lead and you had to go through great pressure creates diamonds. You had to go through this to create the gold. And I actually have no longer had any fear or any actual feeling of mistrust or distrust in the process, because this is a process, it's happening, and very soon it will all just emerge as a Nova Gaia, a new earth. So we're just witnessing the snake shedding the skin of all that fallen, dead patriarchal paradigm, and then the birthing of a new timeline. So, I mean, you can get into all the nitty gritty. There's so many pieces to it, but it really doesn't even matter because none of this is real anyways. And so if you just focus on what we want, which we want liberation, we want freedom codes, we want like...
Well, the thing I'm thinking about when I'm listening to what you're saying is like it doesn't matter, but then on some level there's these like I see these like layers that are going up underneath and there's these chords. There's still these like chords where they're able to initiate or assert some level of control or force or dominance or, like pushing this Mark Carnage guy in because they're pulling him in to do something. Like there's an agenda behind this. And he's not a permanent situation, right? He's just a temporary placeholder until you guys can actually have an election.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's
Well, it
happening?
doesn't really matter because all of that is still playing into the illusion. It's like costumes and masquerade balls. It's like the illusion is what keeps us trapped into this matrix. And yes, they're trying to create what Rudolf Steiner called, which is an eighth sphere, which is this artificial whole, I see and I send it out is like how they're taking the flower of life in the actual 5G frequency towers, and they're mimicking the flower of life through 5G frequency vibrations. And this is fascinating, and it's got evidence to support and suggest that that's real and what's going on. So yeah, we're trying to be taken over by these same sorts of beings that are desperate to keep us locked down. However, there's just like no way that it's possible. Because if we feed it, it's like the Cherokee two wolves. If you feed that dark wolf, it'll continue to grow. And this is all hives. This is all colonies, colonies of the hive of the queen. And she is a fallen queen. She is now dead. And then King Charles, he's dead
So
and
where do
he
you think the
was,
power shift has ultimately shifted then? Because there's always going
well,
to be a power play that's occurring. There's
right
always
now, the actual woman who's in power is a First Nations woman. So you guys in America, we have the chief of command, which is Trump, right? And here we have the governor general, which is a woman, Mary Simons. And Mary Simons is actually this native woman, reminds me of Sedna, if you know the story of Sedna. And she is literally our general in command, like our chief in command. So I see that there's either, this great new feminine rising on Pachamama Turtle Island here, wherein this woman, Mary Simons, could really quite easily just cancel this whole nightmare. So I'm trying to send her enhancements to get her on board. Uh, the UNDRIP is the next process, which is the United Nations Declaration of Reconciliation of Indigenous Peoples. And that is a very sneaky tactic. So we're watching all eyes, all three eyes open on that one, wherein it's land back, and they're just taking the land back. So yeah, I really feel like, we can get involved in all the details, the fine prints, which are important, but it's also so important to just overlay and cancel. So canceling through the nines, because I also found out that the Queen Victoria, who set up all of this Canadian infrastructure
yeah.
template, she's like a 99999. She's got so many nines in her chart, it's insane,
Well,
which
that's
is
usually
zero.
what we do here on my channel is we get into the details of things because
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that are playing out here and it's very multidimensional. And
Sure.
so I kind of like the engagement of trying to pull in all the elements and all the pieces. And I get that there's a higher timeline that's occurring. There's a new Earth timeline that's occurring. There's a timelines where the duality is not occurring. There's timelines where this doesn't even exist.
hmm
And we
hmm
can access all of them.
Like chutes and ladders, right? You're like, you can go shooting up or you can fall down, sorry, the slide is the falling down or shoot up on the ladder. It's like we want to climb up and out of the decaying corpse of this corporation. And that's the resurrection. So that's the new earth. And this is all like one giant spiritual test to be born through that ego death and into that soul capacity. But
I just
yeah.
want to jump in, Shakina, if you don't mind. Like, I totally agree with what you're saying, but I'm going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate, just like going on the other side. And I do see that humanity has the potential to go into the direction into this new earth, but we are also being bombarded massively by this other technocratism. And so I believe that it really comes down to the choice of humanity. And humanity does have to, play out this karma debt, like karmic debt that the earth is holding. And because we are her bodies, we borrowed her body. We've kind of like taken on that karma. So we have to all play it out together. But I do believe that there is this like larger picture that is going on and that they're trying to sneak in like snakes, like Mark Carnage, into the system so that they can take over and be in control. And so if you don't mind, if I can just give like a little bit of like an overview of like who he is and like where he comes from. This is all based on Whitney Webb's work. And so I got this from her article. You can go to limitedhangout.com and you can find all this information. So I took some notes and basically what he is he's one of the leaders of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. And so they are trying to follow the information from COP 2026, which is basically, they call it like greening all of planet Earth. So what they want to do is digitize all natural resources, all humans and all life on Earth. And so he is part, as well as So Mike Carney, Mike Bloomberg, Mary Shapiro, and Nigel Topping are all the top leaderships for this or G fans or whatever it is. And so now he's been placed in a very strategic position to be able to start implementing this. And so this is basically a uniting of the world's and all of the banks and the financial institutions to shift into this like different way of, financial, I don't know, what's the word, like incentives, and also like the way that we, manage money. And they believe that all earth and all nature is massive, enormous private capital, and it's worth like trillions of dollars. So they basically want to digitize all of us. So he's now been placed in a very strategic position in Canada with massive amounts of resources to possibly start implementing this. So I just wanted to bring that like to the forefront for everyone, and just kind of like, switch like our conversation a little bit more to like the political part of it, because it's definitely this techno elite trying to take over and trying to, instead of colonialism, it's now technocratism. And so it's like they've shifted. They're finding a new way to control humanity. So it's fascinating and it's interesting. And I do believe that ultimately we have the power within ourselves to choose. And I've said this before on the show that I think two of us are kind of merging into two different types of humans. One of them is going to be transhumanism, and the other one is going to be for the earth, for the people, for, all life on this planet and protecting it. So it really comes down to this choice that we have, and we're like at the precipice of it right now.
Yeah.
So
I agree,
And it does
Ani.
feel like, just to say real quick, and then Raquel, you go. It does feel like there's some sort of double-edged sword that they're playing with that, because that Mark Carnage guy seems to be pushing this whole green like philosophy, the Green New Deal, the green vision, basically. And it's like it's some sort of soft implementation, or it's a way that they get people to put their guard down and be accepting, and also to mind control, while they really actually are playing like that double-edged sword.
I,
Yeah, it feels like they're pushing it through that.
I agree. And I just wanted to fine tune what Ani said. It's the international bankers that are going to be fine tuning it to the private banking sector. That's how they're going to flip this whole thing around. So basically, they're going to do away with the international institutions, if you will, or the international banks. And this guy is coming from a banking background, right? He belonged to the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, and so he's got that banking international, economic background, if you will. And so he knows the ins and outs of how these things work. And he's also working for the crown. So, they all flow back into that World Economic Forum, UN sort of pipeline, if you will. And so by bringing all of these monies back into the private sector, they're basically lining their pockets, but they are disguising it by promoting it to the Canadian public as this Green New Deal and sustainability and, the 2030 agenda, if you will. So that's the packaging of all of this, right? They're making it look good to the Canadians as they present it to the Canadians, but this is what's going on in the background. They're basically bringing in their own agendas, their own private deals, just to make their own agendas possible.
So it makes me wonder, is this
Oh, Missy, say that
Sorry,
again.
say
I
that
think you
again.
cut out.
I said, isn't it interesting? The United States actually wants to buy Canada, right? We already, the change with the Gulf of Mexico now to the Gulf of America, to have the whole turtle and then the body, so this whole area, the whole continent is the Americas, which originally is what it was. It was the Americas.
Mhm.
But it also, could we say it's because of the resources? There's a lot of resources in Canada.
Well, I've been told Mark Carney's actually kind of there to basically sell off Canada to Trump. And so like Mark Carney's already moved his entire network to New York. So he's no longer doing his business in Canada. It's all, he like lives in New York. The guy's not even Canadian, has three passports from three different countries. So I mean, he's kind of like one of these global player WEF puppets that are just trying to, upstage the 2.0 Trudeau because he was a failure. Nobody liked him.
Well, Trudeau is strategically placed by the World Economic Forum. And so he's been put aside and this new guy has come in because you're probably right. I was just thinking that when you were talking, I was like, I wonder if he'll sell it to Trump or not to Trump, it's the United States, And so, however, if that does happen, then the whole prophecy of Turtle Island will start coming forth, which is very interesting. And we would start gaining back, some of the body of the turtle. So that's really fascinating if it does happen. But it probably will cause some upheaval, and I wouldn't be surprised if Canadians, I could see them revolutionizing too and kind of like fighting against it as well. So
it's 100% happening. I mean, there's so many different groups that I'm aware of here, all organizing and all doing the work to take this apart and dismantle it.
Yeah, I totally
Raquel,
agree.
you sent me a video one time about talking about them already liquidating the assets.
Yes, I was going to
And
say that too. So yeah, all of this is happening in the background. And I just want to go back to what I said earlier. It's not that Canadians are not awake. They are awake. And, going back to the trucker convoy, like you said, Indy, that was like a spark of, awakening for everybody. But what I want to say is that Trudeau came in and he sort of put a damper on that light, if you will, by imprisoning all of the the leaders of the trucker convoy, and in a way he stamped the foot on all of those beautiful lights, if you will. And so I think that put a lot of fear into the collective, if you will. And so people had to like step back in a way and just gain their strength, and take a breath. But they're like the silent what's it called, the silent collective, if you will, that's waiting to regroup and to come forward powerfully in terms of what's going on. And I think you're right, Shakina Ma, in saying that there are many groups that are gathering, and many are of the same idea of what's happening. And just to go back to this whole Mark Carney sort of situation, he's been given some sort of position, like he's been given the prime minister position right now. But when you really think about it, if we go back to to what Shakina brought forth with the illusion of Canada, they essentially, it's not legal what's actually taking place. Canada belongs to the United States, right? And so with that in mind, if you look at what he's bringing forth in terms of this carbon tax, being written off, you see him pretending to sign something in front of the people. It's like he's not even given the authority to sign something off. It's the Governor General that has to sign off on this carbon tax removal, if you will. And it cannot be removed until it is debated in Parliament. Now, wait a minute, you don't have the Parliament because they've prorogued Parliament, right? So there is no debate. So it's not legal. Like, where does this stand? It's like it's just a big, it's a big show for the Canadian public and what they're doing, really. I don't think it's legal. I don't think what they're doing is legal, to be honest. So
Well, it's
yeah, I
not
just wanted to
legal
bring that.
because the law is all maritime law, and the maritime law is what's being put down. So, yeah, the whole of Canada connected to the maritime law was what the Queen was all about, right? Which is why it's a corporation. And so basically at this point, it's the changing of the guard. And so now there's this new formation happening. And I really believe Trump, I mean, he's such a shapeshifter. So it's so hard to read the guy. He's a wild card. But he absolutely reminds me of the Pendragon and the King Arthur stories. Like these are like the warriors that come forth to bring about justice, right? So, I mean, I would like to believe, and I feel like that's a big key is to believe. You must believe in the good of man. You must believe to be living. It's right in the word, right? So to live in the world we want, we have to believe and feed that energy as like a command, like you would program a crystal. So I'm just like seeing my mind's eye that Trump is going to nullify all this fake, illegal, false matrix and kind of open back up the quarantine on this planet, because that's been a big part of what these draconian lords have all ruled over, all the stargates, all the portals, all the places of power. They took out the entire natural grid that ran Atlantis and so on and so forth. So they reset us, took, Tartaria is like that marking point where these like Rockefellers, Rothschilds, those 13 families basically took over the planet, like signed, sealed, and delivered. So now I feel like that's getting the reversal. Snake eats its tail, Ouroboros. We're like right in the ear of the snake. Everything's just like full circling back to the truth, to the original blueprints. Yes.
So here's a $1 million Canadian question. Do Canadians want to be a part of the United States? Do they want to be the 51st state?
It's a split. It's funny because if you take out, like, first to go is Alberta, then Saskatchewan, then Manitoba, then BC. But the first to go gives the middle finger because this is the United States and then this is Alberta. But anyway, so the basic kind of 50-50, you have a whole bunch of people who are like, God save us, Trump. We need you. Please help us. We're all aware of how absolute like nightmare the carnage factor is. However, then there's the brainwashed, mind controlled, that you can slap them in the face a million times and they still won't see it. So I would say it's like a split, about 50-50.
I think it might be good to play that video now, indeed, the Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can loosen things up with that.
I'm curious to hear from Shekinah Grace with that, though, and also your response to Raquel with do you feel that, Canadians, do they want to be a part of the 51st state?
I'll let Shekinah Grace go.
I just kind of feel into the collective. I don't know. I don't follow a lot of groups. I'm not like a real activist in that way. But I personally haven't felt resistance like in my body to uniting with America. Like it just feels a part of the unity consciousness or like the Christ consciousness, like possibility, now I don't like, it's kind of, I guess I would say if I'm witnessing just I'm from a very small village, I'm not even in a big city. So I suppose I am sort of witnessing that 50-50 split, like Shekinah Ma said, just if I'm watching on social, like on Facebook and stuff. So it's like, for me, it's hard to say because I don't have a real census on larger populations. But when I tuned into it, just like in a meditation, when I see like lines and grids and stuff, and energetically, like I did really feel that Saskatchewan and Alberta almost like, it felt like a yes, that they would be more on board with that, and almost like it was like a necessity on some level because of the resources that they have. And with Trump's involvement, like so what was coming through was that, like in Saskatchewan, it's a lot with grain production, right? Like food production. And in Alberta, it's more oil oil and gas, like even into Saskatchewan as well. But so those are the two like major resources that are valuable to the rest of the world in terms of trading and economy. Again, I don't know like the nitty gritty and all the languaging around this, but in a general sense, they have like more of the resources or self like made wealth in terms of what the province can produce for themselves. And but so that's great on one level, but when I go into the underground of the farming industry and agriculture in Saskatchewan and then the oil industry in Alberta, it's a huge looshing operation. Like in Saskatchewan, it is biological warfare on the solar plexus and the microbiome. All of the glyphosate, all of the like GMO crops and industrial farming there is, I would say, like a direct biological attack on, you know, the willpower of the people if you connect it with the solar plexus and the digestive system. So that's something that I've kind of picked up on. And then in Alberta, like, and that's like in a general sense, maybe not all farmers are in alignment with that style of farming, but the majority are still kind of hooked in or trapped and got manipulated even to sign away their like sovereign independent farms to incorporate them. So a lot of the family farms have been incorporated, which I'll just say that much. I don't again know all the legal terms, but I feel in my body what that means. And then in Alberta, what I saw in the underbelly and what I've also sort of witnessed again generally, but like a huge percentage of the oil industry is the wealth is made off of, you know, addiction and like debauchery and Typhon tunnels and sodomy and like cheating on wives and destroying families, because these oil patch workers go in and they make all of this money and then they go and spend it on like gambling and drugs and alcohol and, you know, sex. And so, you know, it's a bit like the word snake oil came up when I was tuning into Alberta and Calgary. And when I looked it up, I didn't actually know what it meant, but at some point, snake oil was sold as like a false health cure. So it was like, it basically means like fraudulent, you know, or illusory like remedy. So those are just, and the reason why I think in a way it would be beneficial for Trump to be involved there is because if he is truly like on the mission of like healing and exposing corruption, then he possibly could correct, like make use of the resources, but heal up like the whatever's being funneled into like the Bermuda Triangle and then back up into like the UK. And like Calgary is like straight across from UK. And so these are kind of the dots and connections that I've made. And in terms of the rest of the country, like I'm not sure, but that's just what I was sensing, you know, and feeling that it felt almost like I was getting the message that it would even be a good thing for Trump to get involved there, if he indeed is about like, you know, doing things in a good way. But I don't know for sure if that's the case, if that makes sense.
It seems as if you're saying there's a potential or a possibility that the provinces could break off or separate, and some of them join the United States and some of them stay with the crown.
I mean,
You know what I was
the
thinking, Andy,
initial
when she was bringing up when Shekinah Grace was talking about the rain, it brought us back to that roundtable we did about the fires in Gavin Newscomb and how they weren't allowed to divert the water from Canada to put out the fires to save some fish that they thought was going to go extinct. And had, you know, if these land grids are all connected, the water should flow downstream into California from those Canadian grids.
Mm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot there with that. That's for sure.
And then,
Yeah.
with the 5G and the tech, like what I saw in kind of like Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, Saskatchewan, like there's so much chemical farming, like chemicals going into the land, and then the chemtrails, like it's like people are completely severed from like a root and a crown chakra accessibility, and they're just kind of floating. I mean, this is just what I see energetically. They're just sort of floating in this like no man's land in terms of energetics or chakra, like ability
Mm.
to have access to the kundalini, the true kundalini grids. So um, I saw like that Calgary could potentially be like a pineal cage as well. So I
That's an interesting thing to take note of as well, because if you think about this turtle island, we're talking about Mexico, the United States, Canada, and really where the root of the Kundalini rises up from, I would say it's the Amazon, and then if you're following that up to Canada being the crown, well, is it that the lands of Canada may have more blockages with getting like life force energy up to the crown or up to that place of thought or vision or direction? Like maybe there's a blockage somewhere in the land with bringing up more of that root chakra energy or that, I guess, power or courage that would be, supplied from that chakra basically because it seems almost too, and one thing that came to mind for me was when I was looking at, well, I feel like one of the things that, with at least with America, why we have so much fire, like we've gone through the American Revolution, and I mean, me and Missy have been bringing up a lot of this American history because we're getting ready for our South Carolina mission. But I mean, it's like we've had to fight, and we had to literally fight to emancipate ourselves from the British rule and from the taxation of the British and from the control of the crown. Like we had to you know, literally go to war for it and everything. So I'm wondering if, I mean, has Canada ever had to ha like fight for freedom or emancipation? And would we be witnessing something like that coming forward? If those energies are finally root chakra powers coming all the way up to the crown, and truth is coming, and the awakening is coming in, and the realization of the deception and that wool or that veil that you said that feels like has been there, would they rise up and like emancipate themselves and not even just to join the United States, but just to emancipate themselves from the crown and just be their own like sovereign nation? I mean, that would be something that would be, I mean, I would be like supporting that 100% as well. I feel like it's whatever Canadians want to do, but it's like they're not given an option. It's something that they have to literally seize and be able to come together and actually take it. And what I see coming forward with a lot of these leaders, like Mark Carnage, Pierre, and Trudeau that stepped down, it's like when they speak, none of them have any spirit behind their words. They literally sound like a corpse, like Shekinah said. They sound like they're dead living light. There's nothing behind them, and that's the thunder that I feel like Trump brings. Is like there's always like a fire behind him.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, coming from a
Indeed.
higher perspective, right? And I think this goes back to what we just did in the UK indie. It's that awakening of that Christ or Christos energy, right? The Christ consciousness energy that's coming in through King Arthur and the awakening of that warrior spirit, if you will. So with that energy being awakened, all of these crown chakra energies, if you will, that you rightly said in Canada, is going to be awakened. And the person to do that is Trump. Unfortunately or fortunately, I know a lot of people don't necessarily assimilate themselves to him as a leader, but this is coming from a higher perspective. And whether he's going to be there for a long while or for a little while, he's the one that's bringing in the peace. He's the one that's exposing the underbelly of this darkness, if you will, that has ruled us for many thousands of years, even though people have been unaware of the Draco situation. But that's where this is all stemming from, right? This is our galactic history, right? And so Trump is the only one that can bring about all of these pieces together, and he already has. I know a lot of people don't necessarily think he's the right person to do it, but if you look at it, he's already orchestrated peace with Ukraine. He's already orchestrated peace with Russia. You know, you've got to look at all of these big moves that he's making. And somehow Canada falls in with all of that. If he does, in fact, take on Canada or annex Canada as part of the US, then there is that overarching reason why all of this is happening, because he's the only one that can bring about this peace and bring all of these things to light. And he is doing that in the background, whether people know it or not. If you bring in the Doge situation, that's like a huge undertaking to unravel what's been going on in the background, which all of these politicians, including the Canadian ones, they were hand in glove with the Democrats in the US. It's an exact replica of what has happened in the US that's happened in Canada. And, if you take Hillary Clinton, if you take Obama, they were all hand in glove with Trudeau and his family and all of these other liberals, right? They just present something very different to the Canadian public. But what's happening in the background is that they are basically fleecing the country and, taking all of its resources out of the country and pocketing it for themselves. They all have overseas bank accounts. They all have riches that they've given off to families and friends. And, it comes back to all these shell corporations that they all have. So it's a very dark, very in engrossed sort of, you know, uh, network, if you will, right? That these beings are all involved in. So it's very extensive.
It definitely feels very disconnected. Like just from looking in from my perspective, it just feels like they're very disconnected from their people. Their people are disconnected from their leaders. Not saying all Canadians, but some Canadians. And it does feel like there's just this wallow of shadow and void that's between worlds, and it's just like you have the globalists over here just doing what they want, and then you have the Canadians that just don't even have a voice entirely, which is very frustrating to watch because it's like you just want to go and lift them up as much as possible, or try to help you know get the message across basically. But I want to say, just to speak to Trump for just a moment, I don't think he's somebody that anybody just initially likes right away, especially if somebody's sitting on the far liberal, uh, brainwashing, Green Party or woke mind virus or whatever it is. Like he's someone that takes time to
Warm up
like,
to.
yeah. And you don't really, of course, none of us trust any of these leaders or these globalists, even Trump. Like you can't trust any of these people, at the end of the day. But I mean, there are certain things that have happened, like his assassination attempt, and just some fundamental things for me personally that have moved me very deeply, where I've looked at some certain things that have happened in the world, particularly like what's going on in the Middle East, and there have been some things that he's done and have said that have spoken to certain things where I'm just like, he brought me a sense of relief. Or something he was doing brought me a sense of like, okay, like he is actually like showing that he cares about certain things that I mean, I personally am caring about. So I mean, it takes time, I think, for I guess him to win you over on something, so to speak. And maybe it's the same thing for Canadians. It just will take time for people to wake up and see, that like there's more potentials here. But I mean, it would be really nice to see the Canadians get out from underneath the carnage and the WEF and the monarchy, because it's like y'all have been there too long. You've been under that crown for too long. I mean,
Revolution will have to happen.
yeah.
However, it is the crown of the Americas because it's at the top. It really shows that we really have to do that clearing at that Tavern of Rainbow Row clearing, because the whole piece with that, it's not the Crown Royal Whiskey of Canada, it's the the royal crown. And what we have to clear at that tavern at Rainbow Row is that AI timeline and that reverse chakras, about having the root chakra at the top that connects into not just, Al Ghul and addiction, but that whole AI timeline, the algorithm of the singularity of what they're trying to push forward, which is connected to those shots at Fort Sumter. And it's also connected to the revolution and revelation of Canada, because if all those providences or colonies, I'm not sure what these words mean, if they're really not united, we want to keep them from having a war amongst themselves and repeating what America did when there was a war between the North and the South. And what I found interesting, Shekinah, I'm not sure which one of you sent that video, that during the Civil War, it was the British supplying, this really hit me hard, the British supplying the ships to the Confederacy. And I found that very interesting, because they wanted the North and the South to fight each other, because they wanted to divide and conquer the US for it to fall, so it would go back to the British crown.
Yeah.
But now, as we can see, the crown, the British crown, has a lot of karma, as we know who King Charles is now bowing down to. We talked about that in another live, as well as our UK grid work admits, even though he's bowing to that Stargate 10 religion, King Arthur's rising out of the ashes anyway with that
Indeed.
spell.
Can you, sorry, Miss, didn't mean to cut you off, but can you, I sent you a map of basically what Turtle Island, like the actual Turtle Island looks like. It's in your email. Can you put it up? Because then you can see like the body of it. So it gives people like a perspective of like if these things were to happen, what we're kind of moving into with this prophecy.
Okay,
which
okay.
is interesting.
I'm in my email. Did you send it to?
And yeah, the one that we.
Okay, I found it.
Okay.
Screen share it here.
Yeah. And then I'm just gonna, from the map though that we're sharing, if you can see the body, that actually Greenland looks like the head in a way. And then it like goes down as the body of like Canada, and then it has like its arms, and then the tail is, Mexico, South America, and like basically kind of Mexico. And I mean, I cut it off there. It might extend further down, but I almost feel like South America is like separate from it.
Wow, it definitely does look like a turtle.
Yeah.
It just makes sense that these lands would unify in a way. I mean, how it's all cut up into pieces. I mean, this may be the separation of the dragon's body being cut up into pieces. I know one of the main focuses that we did in one of our grid works was to actually dissolve the borders.
I heard,
Because
yeah. Sorry, Andy.
that's okay.
I heard that the number of squares on the turtle's back is 13. And Shekinah Ma mentioned 13 as like that divine feminine number, right? The number of the goddess. And
So 13 moons. From the 13 moons calendar, it's the natural order of time for
Well,
Earth.
they also have the
galaxy.
28 circles as well on the turtle's back, and then there's smaller circles that equal up to like 360. So it's actually got the lunar calendar and the solar calendar on the back of the turtle. And turtle in the Anishinaabe peoples is like one of our sacred teachers, and its actual medicine is truth. And so we are restoring truth as we work on Turtle Island. It's the medicine of the continent. And then if you look right up in here, I can't point because I don't have that power, but there's over to just here is like a major body. I'll tell you, that's the heart of the turtle. It's where the Assiniboine, I can never pronounce that word, Assiniboine and Red River cross in Winnipeg. And so they now call that place the Forks, which just means, like in my mind, like tuning forks. So there's the heart of the turtle where these two rivers cross, like the aorta and the atrium of the heart. And then you have this actual, I mean, I could read this to you the way, like if you watch Mythos Canada, which is what Missy Hill was referencing. So the Mythos Canada breaks down the entire like template of Canada. And then what it says is that like there is no more land of Canada. All that there is water. So the waters are where we move from. So basically, it says there's no lawfully established independent country called Canada. There is a geographical area that is comprised of sovereign nations, aka provinces. And how exactly is Canada defined is in the Interpretations Act of 1985. So Canada includes all the internal waters. So, here we say mini wachoni, water is life. So mini wachoni, the water is the life. And I feel like when we do the grid working, we need to be working from that heart of that turtle. So if we can resuscitate the heart of the turtle, it's like a literal resuscitation.
Where's the heart of the turtle again? Sorry, Shakina?
It's in Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg.
Winnipeg has the Red River. So actually, if you go to the Saint Boniface Hospital, is literally like the cross points. There's a hospital there. My friend was born there. That's how she knows all this. And they have a First Nations people gathering there, and they do ceremony there. It's called the Forks. So this particular area is the heart chakra of the turtle.
Around these waters here, these river waters. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the hospital that you said. I'd have to put that in. Go, tell me the hospital.
Okay, so the Saint Boniface, which is Boniface Hospital. That's the cross where it's right by the two rivers, which is the Assiniboine and Red River.
Okay.
And if you even type in the Forks, which is a park, it's like a national park in that area.
I just want to zoom out and see here. Okay. Forks. The Forks, Winnipeg? Okay. So this is, say that again?
The Forks, there's like a native center there. And in the Forks Park, like I looked it up earlier and it
I've
was
been there.
Okay, interesting. So, well, tell us a little bit. So we're going to be doing a grid work mission. We're going to be doing it March 30th. And tell us a little bit about this grid work mission. What is at the heart of the mission then?
I would say clearing this hive colony of these reptilian, draconian, fallen matrix builders and restore the natrix, which is that golden light creator substance, and in listening to that Lazarus initiative is Sasha Stone, Alana Freeland, Harold Katzvela, and then I forget the lady who's a doctor who's just phenomenal in just sharing so much of what her work has been uncovering since the COVID and the Jabiru. So
Dr. Anna. It was Dr. Anna. And
they put on a phenomenal discussion. And Harold Katzvela is a German scientist. He's brilliant. And he was specifically saying, like if you feed into the fear for a second, it pulls you into the timeline that is being erased and deleted and falling away like the dead body that it is. And so we really want to plant ourselves in the timeline of that which is the Nova Gaia, the new earth. And so we are like overriding the cancellation of this matrix, and we're restoring the natrix, the original blueprints, which are all held in the water. So the water is the life force. We want to work with the water.
Okay. Well, we're so excited because we're going to be doing this gridwork mission coming up. It's, yeah, March 30th. The links are down in the description. I literally just put it on my website today. So we do have drop-in and one-time signups, or you can get into the remote grid work mission for Canada also on my Patreon, patreon.com/Indigo Angel. And we're still kind of preparing the Squidward mission, I think, overall. I know that Raquel had put an itinerary together, so I'm going to be looking over all of it. And yeah, I mean, this will be really helpful. And I just realized looking at this, there's actually a J seal in Quebec.
Ooh.
So that's interesting. I
I
didn't.
was just going to mention, again, the higher timelines and the new Earth vision is what we want to focus on. But for those, this was new news to me, and it just brought some insight and just even fortifying just the feelings that we have about even patriotism and like this sort of fragmented or disconnect from our leaders and the people and like this little bit of confusion around what is Canada. Today I learned that the Canadian flag, was actually um, taken from the Nationalist Organization of Quebec. And so, and then also that the anthem was also some words were changed, but it was originally an anthem, that a song that was created for, again, the Nationalist Organization of Quebec. So there seems to be like the divide and confusion of us even being like a nation or a country. It really just feels like Quebec has its agenda, or that liberalist, side of things has its agenda since forever ago. And the illusion of us being a unified country is even, if you looked up the history of the Canadian flag and our national anthem, it would probably trace back to that as well. So, and then
So there's a feeling like it's not entirely yours. It's
it's Quebec's, or that
okay.
Quebec's its own country, and we're kind of just serving that that agenda in a way that we don't realize. Um,
Interesting.
They
Okay.
never got colonized. So Quebec stands sovereign, whereas the rest of the provinces are under the colonies of the Queen. So there's a distinction between the French history, and like Macron would have an influential power, as Carney and Macron, I think, are lovers, but they're hooked up right now. And there's something about the Quebec and
Right.
the
Oh,
Carney.
we didn't talk about this. Macron's wife. Okay. Ani's laughing. Raquel's laughing. She's supposedly a man. This is something that like Candace Owens has been all over. And don't get me wrong, I don't like, I'm sorry, but
Well, it's the
I'm not
inversion,
fond of
right?
Candace Owens. I'm not too fond of her.
It's the inversion, right? Wherever they can pull this off and pull the wool over your eyes, they'll do it. And that doesn't
Oh
stop at
my
men presenting
goodness.
as
But
women or women presenting as men.
yeah, when I
Well,
started to
and
look
like
into
he's
this,
a
I'm like,
drag
there is
queen.
some legitimate research behind like her actually being a man.
Like another Big Mike.
It's a handler situation, right? It's like these folks are put in place to handle these people. So, whether they are male or female, they have to have that shadow behind them to handle the situation. So,
Well, and the story behind this is so bad. It is literally so bad. Supposedly, it's actually his father.
oh,
Like, yeah, like it was his father. And so they made up this whole story and made up this false, like, history and background of her life. And he transitioned, and now he's actually his wife. So, yeah, I mean, talk about handler,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's they investigated it. All of the journalists that tried to bring information forward on it all got put in jail. Candace Owen has literally a lawsuit. They say like Macron has his goons over here in the US and is like going after her and suing her and trying to silence her, all this stuff just to get this to go away. But all they have to do is pull out some pictures to prove that like the last 30 years of her life was like she could verify that, but I guess she can't do that. She legitimately cannot verify with any pictures over the last 30 years of
Well, I
like,
guess that's where Elon Musk should come in with his truths, with his X, and get all the facts right.
And I don't know if you've seen her walking around, but she walks very bow-legged.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a few pictures.
And I'm
Hey,
like,
Indy, if you
that's
don't mind
interesting.
going to your Scribbles map, I just wanted to bring that grid work back, just to give a few more indications of what we're going to be talking about on that grid work mission. Because there is a bit more that we're going to be covering. So I just want to tell our audience as well a little bit more about the mission on the 30th of March.
On the topic of Mark Carney, though, just quickly, it's kind of been in my ear, so I'm going to mention it. That you mentioned he was sworn in on the Friday, I think, the 14th. Is that correct? Or
Correct.
he, um, the Sabian symbol for the degree where the sun was at in the tropical Pisces was the symbol for rooting out corruption, and so I think that's the beginning of his chart in his position. So I think that's like he's catalyzing the awareness of the people of the corruption. I just wanted
Well,
to
I think
mention.
Shakina Ma brought in something as well in terms of the dates. You
Mhm.
said 29th, the day before our mission, Shakina Ma. There was something to do with that, right? You had all this 999
That's where
numbers
they were
coming
like
in.
coming up with the Commonwealth to remove the Queen and monarchy control over Canada and put it into the Commonwealth of the people. So we just celebrated Commonwealth Day here in Canada and within the Commonwealth countries. But yeah, so that was the March 29th is when it got removed from the monarchy and put into the actual peoples. And so that's where it still stands. It still stands with the people. So as soon as we decide to stand up, then the tables that are pressing us will actually flip over and we'll be able to actually no longer be associated as victims, but victors. So
Mhm.
we're switching from the victim consciousness to the victor consciousness.
Great. So going back to Indy's map, Indy, if you don't mind just putting a quick marker on Mount Shasta, Bermuda Triangle, and Calgary, please, and thank you.
What was the last one?
Bermuda.
Oh, Bermuda. I think I might have that. Okay, yeah. Oops. Yeah, I think we've do you want me to just show that picture?
Sure, if you have it handy. I just want to show that that's sort of the idea behind this mission and the common ground that we will, if that we established along those grid lines. So
And you
I'm just going to read off the mission, if you will, specifically. So we are reviving what is known as Kanata, which is Knata, which is based on the Aboriginal pronunciation of what Canada is all about. So we are basically reviving those lands while acknowledging the Aboriginal heritage and the indigenous First Nations of the Inuit and the Métis people. And then perhaps Shakina, either of you can perhaps contribute to that in terms of the indigenous people. And so the other one we're going to be doing is healing the lands in terms of toxins. And this is the farmlands in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, and that line that's being drawn from Calgary all the way down to the Bermuda Triangle, which Shakina Grace talked about, crisscrossing her lands and where she comes from. And then we also talked about Calgary, which is a direct link to the 11th Stargate, which is directly linked to Stonehenge in the UK. And so that goes back to that whole King Arthur light, that we're trying to revive as well. And then we're trying to give a chance for the people of, for the population of Canada to heal in terms of bringing in their, higher self energies, like Shakina Grace talked about, them being cut off from, the chakra system, if you will. So bringing back that higher dimensional connection back to the land, and then bringing in the new earth energies. And we are specifically targeting Lake O'Hara, which is considered to be one of those light cities bringing in the new Earth energies. So that's sort of a broad highlight of what we are hoping to achieve. But as you know, grid work, it takes us all over the place. So that's sort of broad strokes into what we are hoping to achieve.
Okay,
I just love
definitely.
where this map goes through. This map is interesting. I mean, a lot of places that I have actually been, it's touching Western North Carolina, it's touching parts of South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, it's going through Alabama, it's going through Arkansas, and the parts of Colorado and Utah.
Oh, you cut out there, Missy.
Oh, I
But
was done, but I'm just saying, yeah,
but
this
yeah, definitely. This definitely comes down through Charleston.
yes, it
Um,
does. Yeah.
and then yeah, over to Mount Pinnacle
And
too.
Western
So
North
very
Carolina too.
interesting.
And the western part of North Carolina on the Tennessee border.
Yeah, so this is all it's all divinely connected, that's for sure. Um, okay, well, I definitely look forward to doing this remote mission with everyone. Um, and I think it's going to be really powerful. I know I typically tune in about a week before we get started because then I start to get the codes in alignment with the timing. So I'm going to probably have some clearings I bring forward to this mission as well. But I think this mission will definitely serve as I think, like a pre-scout to the boots on the ground mission we're doing in South Carolina. So I look really forward to it. And I'm really excited. If anyone watching today wants to participate in the Canada Remote Gridwork mission, the links are down in the description of this video. And come and sign up and come and join us. We're all going to be there on the 30th, so we look forward to seeing you. And uh, does anyone have any last messages for everyone watching before we wrap up our show today?
I just wanted to say it's also interesting. Shakina Grace mentioned that Carnage came in on the 14th, which happened to be the full moon, and also eclipse. So that was quite an interesting, like, and I do believe the new moon then would be like 28, so it'll be 2 weeks. So I think that's actually going to be close to when we do this.
Yeah.
There'll be another eclipse as well.
Also, on the day we picked, or whoever picked the date, I think I was told it was you, Indy. The 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 geometry of the chart of that day forms a Merkaba and an icosahedron.
It's also the end of Ramadan.
And also the numbers come down to 3333. It's 330, right?
Wow.
2025. So yeah. Actually,
Wow.
it's 333. 333.
That's a lot of
Actually, wait. 339.
a lot of synchronicities.
It's 339. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's 33. Yeah, 33.
Listen, everybody just needs to fast. Don't do too much.
I'm doing a full week of alternating fast, 36 hours fast, 1 day of eating, 36 for 7 days in preparation. But the icosahedron, Shakina Ma mentioned the waters, and that's a geometry associated with the water element. So there's another synchronicity there. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good mission. I'm so excited and yeah, I look forward to it. So we'll prepare for this big astrological alignment that's coming up and
Oh,
uh,
and Neptune shifts into Aries. Sorry.
oh wow, okay. We're gonna have to maybe write all this down and re-go through all of that like the day that we have the mission so that way we're all aware of everything that's aligned because it sounds like it's maybe like 10 different things that are occurring. So that's really significant. Um,
I think we
but
just blew up the Earth resonance.
yeah, and then Ani will come in and be like, the Schumann resonance just blew up. We'll be like, what? So yeah, but
It's totally meant to be, Indy. I think we picked a good date.
Definitely. Well, when I saw that it was Eid, I was like, okay, good day for a clearing because we're wrapping up, I think, that's the day that I would, not to get too, dark on anyone, but in terms of like Islam, that's the day that the devil is allowed to come back out and play, essentially. They say that the devil goes away for all of the days that they're on Ramadan. And then after it's over, that's when he comes back out. Like,
No, we're not letting that happen.
yeah.
We're shutting we're shutting the gates on all of that.
That's right. We're shutting all those Vatican Luciferian tombs that were opened up. Maybe that should be a part of what we're doing, because you know what? There's actually now that I think about it, I think it's in Winnipeg, but there's a parliament building in there that has a checkerboard floor. And I know they have like a Medusa statue or symbol in there as well. There's something with that.
I
I
think it's
remember
in
that from a
Winnipeg.
while
Yeah, I'll have
ago.
to look it up too. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
get a picture. Yeah.
we'll look it up.
That's the heart chakra. Makes sense, eh? It's like they would, of course, have that underground temple there.
And it's the day before All Fools Day, too. Last year that fell on an Easter, and I lost my beloved sweet cat Freya that day, so it was awful.
I'll just read a couple comments from the chat too, on our way out. Mount Yapaitso. M says Mount Yapaitso seems to be where the J seal is located on your map. We may want to look at that as well for the mission. Yeah, we need to look at that J seal and see where that's at. Good call. Thank you, M. Shaman's Moon says I'd love to find the ley lines in Canada as well. Yeah, we'll have to maybe do a little pre-scouting and see where all of the significant ones are running. We also decode the ley lines as we go sometimes because we find where the significant vortices are and then they reveal themselves. So there's always, a little bit of spontaneity in our pre-scouting and exploration time that we do. Steven says, Bravo, dear avatars. Brilliant sharing. So much cool gnosis and remembrance. You are all lit up beautifully. Keep moving forward. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see. Jim loves somebody's accent here, he says. You have to clarify that, Jim. Shakana
Ma.
or Raquel? Yeah, Shakana Ma Raquel. Let's see. Jenny took level one with me a couple years ago. Yeah, I do have grid work facilitator courses, level one, two, and three. Yeah, there's quite a few different choices now that you have to choose from. Each facilitator course is different. We have a different focus on each one, but all go through beginner to advanced levels of grid work. If you're just learning for the first time, yeah, but everyone's tuning in with their flags. We got UK in the house. Dan's from the UK. Yeah, we love you guys. Thank you for tuning in with us. Make sure to put a big like on this video on your way out. And we hope that you're going to be joining us for the Canada remote mission and also for South Carolina. It's time to come out of the house and work on planetary grid work restoration, rehabilitation, and come and join the team because we got some really powerful ceremony work in store for you guys. We're very excited. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. We love you. Have a beautiful everything.